what inspired you to look into the schooling system and the history behind it?
Yeah, because I had grandchildren, and because I had experience with it. Matter of fact, I have ongoing experience with it, dealing with the children that parents, especially who are trying to get their children into school, and dealing with the vaccination issues that they don't want. I was the first, I believe, in the black community or in the cultural community to put together a vaccination exemption package against that, so that parents could submit it to the schools, starting in New York back around 1985, 86. And I've raised my daughter and son to learn from schooling itself, and from it, the part where we are dealing with one-to-one education from people who are dealing from from a college base, or wanting to get into college, or just wanting to get a craft or some kind of skill. Dealing with parents who had to function in that atmosphere rather than getting that child to come to a real good education, to understand how to problem solve, how to build a business rather than trying to get a job. So for a long time, I raised my son and my children, all my children and all my stepchildren, my godchildren, to be independent and to seek out a full education, not just the education that gets you to marginalize your efforts into a skill that will get you a job. Because if that skill can no longer give you what it is that you need, you have to be able to adjust and have other skills and other abilities to problem solve, and other abilities to do things. So looking into the education system and trying to get the best of it for my children, I found it wanting, seriously wanting. And looking into it even deeper and seeing that my education back 3 or 4 generations ago was infinitely more involved in raising the whole being and teaching whole subjects rather than just giving them enough to be able to take a test so that they could pass to the next grade. If you didn't do well, you stayed back until you did well, and then you move forward. But today, they don't care. So they pretty much changed the education system to match the dumbing down process that our children today have been experiencing.
Well, thanks for that response. And I also wanted to get your thoughts on, have you seen the RSA animated presentation by Sir Ken Robinson, where he talked about, you've seen that one?
No, I haven't.
Well, pretty much what he talked about was the whole process of the school system, and what I talk about a lot on my show is the fact that a lot of times in schools, the way they're built and set up, they actually do more to kill and harm curiosity and creativity in children than they do to build the natural skills and interests out there. So a lot of times my show is geared towards dropouts. But in his presentation, what he talked about was the fact that they had done this study where they took little 3-year-old children and they had tested them on what's called lateral thinking. It's like it's almost a way to test creative genius. And the way they do it is they present them a simple problem like a paperclip. And they ask them, how many uses do you think you could come up with for this paperclip? And when they do this test on little 3-year-old children, like 97% of them, 98% of them score as geniuses on the creative level. And they started the study from students that were just getting into school. And then it was a long-term study. So they would test the students over and over again every couple of years. And what they noticed was by the time the children were 12 years old and had already gone through years of the schooling process, over half of them had lost their capacity, and only about maybe 30 to 40% remained as creative geniuses in that same circumstance. What do you think about the ways that the school system actually works more to slow people down from achieving their full potential than it does to actually help them get there faster.
Well, that sense that you just spoke on seems to have been a redundancy because this knowledge, this thing was already known. Those who set up the present system knew about that genius and the reason for implementing the present system, which actually is a kind of offshoot of the Prussian system that was instituted in the Americas sometime around the late 1800s. It was for the purpose of dumbing down the population and taking away the ability for the population to solve its own problems, because the long-range plan for America was the conquest of America through industrialization barons and what we call these the families of the Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. They did not need thinkers, they needed workers. So in order to do that, they imported the Prussian system, which was a three-tiered system. The top 1% would be the rulers and the ones who got the full 360-degree education, not what to think, but how to think and how to solve problems, nurturing genius and nurturing leadership. The next 4%, which constituted the top 5%, the next 4% would be those who would be educated just enough into the fabric of society so that the way that the society was structured in economics, politics, sociological situations, sports, and so forth, we were educated at that level, lawyers and other types of people who would be the administrators who would help the rulers to rule and to put the laws and to create the laws and to structure the laws so that the top 1% would then maintain their rule through the semblance of law. And these people would be the keepers of the gate, the next 4%. The bottom 90% would be the workers. They didn't need to know how to think. They would be educated in how to deal with communal activities, not to be stressed out with thinking too much about problem solving. Get into functionality, get into specific structures where you'd learn to repair computers or learn how to do things that did not require problematic thinking or abstract thought. So the bottom 90% essentially is what we're dealing with when we're dealing with the so-called public education system. And of course, what this test that you were speaking about is nothing, again, more than a redundancy of something that was already known. They know that the genius level of children from the ages of 2 years of age all the way up to 3 and 4, at these ages, they know that the imagination, which is the field of creativity, is broad in a child. And just doing certain things, they would already know based upon their parents, the attentiveness of their parents, the kind of environment they were in that would stimulate the kind of curiosity that would energize that kind of brain ganglia growth of intelligence, because that's what it is. Teaching them how to cross the barriers between the left and the right brain. They know all about that. That's why the so-called outcome-based education system was instituted, to shut down that ability. So yes, whatever it is that they were coming across with, we knew that 25, 30, maybe 40, 50 years ago, even 100 years ago. Those who understood what the education system was and how the German education system, what they call the Prussian system, the one that instituted the bachelor's, the master's, and the so-called PhD, all of that came from Germany.
Yep.
That was a 3-tier system. So from that point, we already know what the education system is to do. It's to dumb down, to create consumers, and to create workers that do not think. In other words, to structure a hive-minded society.
And with regards to that, I was also thinking, because one thing I always bring up on my show is the fact that, like in today's society in America, we have a high unemployment rate. And the thing is, everybody, the majority of people who I know, college students, friends, coworkers of mine, they're all trying to get educated going through the school system. And the education system is only teaching all of these people how to come out and look for jobs. But then how is it kind of makes sense that we have a high unemployment rate when you look at the fact that everybody is being taught how to come out and look for jobs when there aren't enough people actually learning how to create those jobs. Most people are not thinking from the standpoint of, I'm just going to come out here and create a way for myself. most have been trained through the school system to just fit into someone else's plan. So they come out and they just look for opportunities as opposed to looking for the opportunities they could just take advantage of right the second to start making a living for themselves. So do you have any input on that?
Well, the input on that is that the society has become ever more streamlined and sophisticated. What they needed were bodies in the initial stages of this industrial society, when they needed the assembly line. All you had to do was to teach them to put a cog here, a wheel in there, a screw in there, and you just keep the assembly line going. Now that we've become so technologically efficient, human participation in the society has become less and less. So the need for human input is less and less. And now what we have is what is known as a surplus in that society. And you deal with poverty. Once you deal with poverty and you deal with lack, the next thing a person who is not allowed to use their mental and cerebral and cognitive creativity, they go directly to their own physiological creativity. And there you have the situation now where the people who don't have end up having more children because they have nothing else to do except express themselves in that manner, which essentially poverty creates overpopulation. So what the societies, those who are the engineers of society now, are creating conditions where we do not need the surplus of men, because men who are the ones who are the creativity, they're the ones who structure the creative in society, so that they're the ones who are supposed to be trained to be problem solvers. And we don't have enough problem solvers because in the black community, especially, because it's not necessary, since our black leaders do not support teaching people how to be leaders anymore. They want to be the leaders. The preacher wants to be the preacher. So he wants a congregation, and we have a congregation mentality, especially when it comes to our children. We don't give them the entrepreneurial mentality. We talk about it, we profess it, but there is no structure in place. There is no support system to actually help children to achieve that. So when we are speaking about unemployment, we are talking about the fact that what there would be out there to be employed by, with the specialization of this society, with the technological input that this society has been focusing our children's minds into, there's nothing else to creatively expand that mentality except to use what's there and hope to get a gimmick within that structure so that you can make some money from it. But true creativity, the true expanding beyond the parameters of this lockdown that we're in, is being maintained so that nobody escapes the specific matrix web that they already got us in. If you start teaching children how to think, that means you start teaching them how to problem solve. The last thing that the people who want to maintain the lockdown want are problem solvers being trained to know exactly who it is and what it is that's keeping them in misery. So what you do is you train them enough to know what to do. That's why the so-called service industry, that's what they call a service industry, where they deal with Walmart or McDonald's.
Yeah, the waitresses.
I call it the service industry. That's the serfs back in the days when popes and the rest of these monarchs and so forth, the people were called serfs. And that's what the service industry has become. Serfs. You train you to be serfs. In fact, the education system works like this now. If Walmart is about to put a Walmart up in the next 3 to 4 years in a specific city, the Walmart corporation goes to the school, the head of the school system, and say, we are building a Walmart here that's going to require these amount of people to fill it. Now, we want your school to actually train these people to become service representatives for Walmart. And that's what they would do with the curriculum for those children for the next 4 years. And that's how they marginalize your children. And unless we take the children out of that kind of automatic structuring of our children's minds and futures and start teaching them for ourselves, then we will always be there as cannon fodder to go to war, or as just meat puppets to actually dance when they say, well, we need a few broom sweepers over here or over there. That's what the education system is today.
True indeed. And what about, do you have any words for like students who who decide that they can't fit into the school system, because you have a very high dropout rate. I believe about 8,300 students drop out of the schooling system, every day in this country, and most of them, are freshmen, very young people below the age of 15 who drop out of school. And if you look at the numbers, this percentage of people are the ones who end up, becoming the criminals, the drug dealers. And a lot of that I attribute it to the fact that the school system is designed in such a way that the majority of human or natural human beings would not want to participate in it. Like, no kid would naturally want to go to school and stay there unless if they are made to go there by the parents, and the parents are made to go, to participate in the school system through the taxation and through the fact that, they have truancy laws. So if your kid, skips school, you get in trouble or you have to pay some money. So looking at all this stuff, like the kids who decide after all this experiences through the school system that they can't fit in and they drop out of the school system, do you have any advice or ideas that they could use to empower themselves instead of just going to the same avenues that lead them down a life of jail or prison, whatever?
Well, this is a plan. Remember, the hip-hop industry was overcome and taken over and contorted and walked into the rap industry, was set up in order to fill the jails. And now people are coming to understand that when we told everybody of that 10 years ago. You had to understand that in order to deal with that surplus that I was speaking about earlier, they had to create a system or industry that would deal with that surplus. It's just like any of the other industries that use the garbage from industry and then create so-called health food from it, like molasses, they say is a health food, or any of these other things that the byproducts of industry use in order to recycle the garbage or the waste matter from that industry.
It's like
that's
fluoride.
Essentially what it is that we're dealing with, a recycling process. And you have to understand that. If you don't understand that, then you won't understand why it is that the prison industrial complex was created. It was created for the surplus. They needed a criminal class in order for them to fill the jails, in order for them to be able to tap into what is known as your exemption priority account. That exemption priority account is an account that is based upon your birth certificate, number one, and number two, the bond that birth certificate represents when you now go down and indemnify it through the Social Security card and number. If you look at the back of your Social Security card and you see those red numbers beginning with a letter, that is the bank account where your bond has been accruing interest from the $2 million that it was when you first were born, or $1 million. It is enough interest in there because your bond, your birth certificate is traded across the world to leverage against debt. So the monies that are accrued in that account is what they take from the so-called felonies that they put into these places where you become a warehouse receipt. Your number and the jail number you got is attached to your Social Security number, and that warehouse receipt is where they take your money that was accrued on your birth certificate to keep you there, and that goes back to the state. It funds schools for the place where the prisoners. It funds the political process. It funds the waterworks. It funds the government. And so the prison industrial complex is set up in order to fund states who don't have enough money. So the government now has cut a deal so that the school, the education system, must be sabotaged in order to create a criminal industrial system, which creates a criminal prison industrial complex. It's a recidivism based upon the most devious and diabolical plan in order to deal with the numbers of bodies. Coupled with that, you're dealing with the food, you're dealing with the water, and you're dealing with something called feminism, which people don't like to talk about, and how feminism has undermined the education system and turned it in favor of girls in the school system, which is why they're the ones that are excelling at getting PhDs now over the men, over the boys. That's not an accident, because they understand that the women do not change societies. that the threat to those who are in power are the males of the society. So he must undermine the school system that teaches them how to problem solve, how to create families, how to lead families, how to create industry. So once you undermine that, you can always get the women to follow, because essentially that's what they do. They support. They do not change society. They support society. So I don't know what I could tell these young brothers and sisters except study the problem so you can understand the kind of tactics that those who are the adversary are using against you. You can't just go out there and think that you're going to be able to know what to do and be successful unless you completely give your soul over to what it is they are about, like most of these people in so-called rap have done.
Yeah.
The P. Diddy's and the Jay-Z's and these people, they've given their soul over. But everybody thinks that because they spit a few rhymes that just sound like, oh, they must be still on our side. They're not. So you have to start looking for a whole new way of thinking about the real problem. Stop looking at all of the distractions they keep giving you and making you believe that your messiahs are in these places where these moguls. Ain't everybody heard about no mogul, a rap mogul. What the hell is a rap mogul? If you knew where the word mogul came from, you wouldn't even have dealt with them. So these are the things that we have to do, educate our children as to what the real deal is out there, if they're ready to listen. Because some of them are not. They're already in their own world, and they already think they know so much they don't need to listen to elders anymore.
True
So
indeed.
if they're ready to listen, then they have to understand what the strategy is that locks us down and take the plan to another level. And don't broadcast it and announce it to just anybody. You have to plan in secret. The Jews don't go out on television like Tavis Smiley with all these black folks lined up and start telling what it is that we're going to be doing. Nobody does that except us. You have to find people who are vibrating on your level, who know what the problem is, have studied it, and have now fielding positive solutions to it that's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. Young people today think they can get it just like that because they're in a cut and paste generation. They can take it from here and take from there. They can sample from this and own this and so forth. That's not what it's about. They did that to allow you to do that. That's why the music industry changed the laws. They changed the laws because they knew that the old heads who gave the foundation to rap and to hip-hop would be paid if hip-hop was to use their materials and that to that level. But they now can steal. Before, when I was in the music business, you couldn't take the old heads' music just the way the people in hip-hop can do today and rap can do today. They changed it so that they knew that the schism and the division between the old heads and the new heads, which is the hip-hop and rap, would not have an association so that they can rule the new heads, which is what they're doing with the music that they're allowing to be put out today. Now, how to tell them what to do? They have to study the problem first before they think about adding on to a solution or getting an idea about a solution. And not many of them are ready to study the problem. That's what the secret is.
True indeed. Well, Dr. Valentine, I appreciate the interview. I'm not going to take up all of your time. Is there anything that you want to shout out, any project you're doing, your website or something that you want to let the listeners know about?
Well, these young people are ready, and if they've at least achieved high school level, and they want college or they have the resources enough, they should go up to our website at uksnow.org and click the courses button and look through the courses that we provide. And if you have the resources to join us, then we would be more than happy. We have young people from all around the world: Africa, Australia, China, and Japan, up in England, Canada, the West Indies. They're all into this university, which we teach live online. And if they want more information on it, and they're within the sound of my voice nationally, I would be happy to call them back. All they have to do is leave their name on our callback service, and the number is 1-800. That's 1-800-847-1291. Again, 800-847-1291. And we're beginning our new semester in October the 19th. So if you're interested, give us a call.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Valentine. I appreciate the interview. You dropped some very powerful information. And I hope we could do this again in the future.
All right. Now, you keep up the good work. Keep striving.
All right. Thank you, sir.